Second Amendment supporters, there is an issue that just sits in our craw, and it festers, and it boils. It's called Fast and Furious. Our own government tried to frame us. And now, it gives me a thrill, a tremendous pleasure to present to you the man who broke Fast and Furious. Please welcome Mike Vanderbough. He broke Fast and Furious. God bless him.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Well, as he said, my name's Mike Vanderbough, and I'm from the great free state of Alabama. I'm also a 3%er. Now, I've been called a seditionist by members of the current regime, and if faithfully fulfilling my oath to the Founders Republic, an unrelenting hostility to those who would undermine and overthrow it makes me a seditionist, then I cheerfully plead guilty. And the 3% movement that I founded has been denounced by that paragon of moral virtue, Bill Clinton. And I'm a perennial honorable mention in the Southern Poverty Law Center's list of dangerous folks. I've even been the subject of 18.5-minute rant by Rachel Madcow on MSNBC.
All right.
And the current Attorney General of the United States knows and despises me by name because of Fast and Furious, story that I broke with my fellow blogger David Codria. Eric Holder would not be surprised to know that the feeling is mutual. Now, the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence calls me an insurrectionist because I don't believe, as they do, in a government monopoly of violence, but rather in a literal interpretation of the Second Amendment as a bulwark against tyranny. As my friend Kurt Hoffman says, it is better to be despised by the despicable than admired by the admirable. And I suppose that my remarks here today will only reinforce these collectivist ill opinions of me. I suppose I can handle the pressure. Now, we meet here today, as other speakers have said, on the anniversary of the battles of Lexington and Concord in 1775. But I'd like to remind everyone that we also meet on the anniversaries of the liquidation of the Warsaw Ghetto in 1943 and that of the Branch Davidians at Waco 50 years later to the day. Two examples of a government monopoly of violence. It is proper then to contemplate the lessons of this day in history, then, now, and in the near future. What I say now, I say with reluctance, with sadness, and not a small amount of dread. But I must say it. For silence in the face of tyranny implies consent, and I do not consent. Neither do I believe do you, for you would not be here if you did. What I have to say now is not easy to say, nor is it easy to hear, and many of you will not like it. You know, American jurisprudence is a standard legal text, and it says that an unconstitutional law is void. This has been repeated throughout our history. An unconstitutional law is void. It has no import whatsoever. That is certainly true. But the tricky part is how we get to make that point when local, state, and federal executive and legislative branches, as well as the courts, are in the hands of the domestic enemies of the Constitution. Everyone who is currently trying to chip away at your right to arms starts out by saying, I support the Second Amendment. Now let me tell you a home truth. Barack Obama supports the Second Amendment about as much as Adolf Hitler appreciated Jewish culture or Joe Stalin believed in individual liberty. If you do nothing else, remember this. Believe what politicians do, not what they say. So what shall we do about this current spate of tyranny that's breaking out all over? Now, the facsimile of a semi-automatic pistol that some of you hold in your hands was smuggled into your state from the south. It was manufactured in Georgia. It was transshipped to Alabama. It came across your state line in a trunk of a car, a rental car, actually. Now, the fact that the authorities of your state have not yet banned sponge guns is immaterial. It's a great thing. It could as easily have been a trunk, a whole trunk full of real pistols, which is, I think, the point we're trying to make.
Okay.
Indeed, before this year, no one thought that other firearms and related items would ever be banned. But they have been.
How are you?
No one thought that the authorities of your state and other states around here would pass laws making criminals out of the previously law-abiding. But they did. If they catch you violating their unconstitutional laws, they will, when they please, send armed men to work their will upon you. And people, innocent of any crime, save the one these tyrants created, will die resisting them. Yet despite the cost, these unconstitutional laws must be resisted. If not now, when? And if not us, who? This is no longer a slippery slope leading to firearm registration and eventual confiscation. It is a precipice that some states have already plunged over and that the federal government threatens to follow. Arrests are happening now in various states. When, if not now, shall we resist? Or will we allow ourselves to be shoved back once again from the free exercise of our God-given, natural, and inalienable rights? Shoved back grumbling, but shoved back. The founders knew how to answer such tyranny. When Captain John Parker, one of the 3% of American colonists who actively took the field against the king during the Revolution, mustered his militia company on Lexington Green, it was in a demonstration of armed civil disobedience. He might have retreated at the British approach, but he didn't. He might have ordered his men to lay down their arms, but he didn't. His defiance was silently but plainly stated. A veteran of the French and Indian Wars, he didn't want a war. He knew what a war was, but he knew that some things are worse than war. The silent defiance of Captain Parker, the British could not tolerate, and someone fired a shot. But even before the shot heard round the world, the colonists understood their weaknesses and their military needs, and they did something about it. They smuggled. They smuggled Dutch gunpowder and French flints. They smuggled tents and uniform cloth and artillery and ammunition. Boston was the high headquarters of anti-royal smuggling, and John Hancock was its prime minister. Connecticut was a small empire built on patriotic smuggling. The colonists knew what to do, and they did it. regardless of the king's ministers and the king's soldiery. They defied the king. They resisted his edicts. They evaded his laws, and they smuggled. Lord above, did they smuggle. Now we find ourselves in a similar situation. The new King Barak and his minions have determined to disarm us, and we must determine to resist them. No one wants a new civil war, except apparently the anti-constitutional tyrants who pass these laws and their media toadies who cheer them on. But a civil war is what's staring us in the face. To think otherwise is to whistle past the graveyard of our own history. We must, if we wish to avoid armed conflict, get across this message to the collectivists who have declared their appetites for our liberty, our property, and our lives. When democracy turns to tyranny, the armed citizen still gets to vote. Just like King George, such people will not care nor modify their behavior by what you say, no matter how loudly or in what numbers you say it. They will only pay attention to what you do. So defy them, resist these laws, evade them, smuggle in what they command you not to have. Only by our acts will they be impressed. Then if they mean to have a civil war, they will at least have been informed of the unintended consequences of their tyrannical actions. Again I say, defy, resist, evade, smuggle, if you wish to stay free, and to pass down that freedom to your children's children. You can do no less than to become the lawbreakers that they have unconstitutionally made of you. Accept that fact, embrace it, and resolve to be the very best, most successful lawbreakers you can be, and you will stay free. Thank you.